Everyone. So I am coming live today. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I said I was going to jump on at 9, but it's a little bit later, but I had to get my cup of tea. So some of you have posted some questions, which is great, and I will address that. But I wanted to jump on and kind of talk a little bit more real about what's going on in the singing world now and how we can kind of navigate that. As singers, what are some of the things to be thinking about, especially as you're starting your career, and how things have changed a lot, right? Especially since I started. And I really wanted to share actually some of my experiences because we have some really awesome people that are talking about their careers, right? And they often have like really awesome careers, right? Like really big careers, and of course they share their horror stories and their glory stories, and it's really great. But I think that there's probably more people out there like me that have been doing this a while and do have careers singing, but it's not like they're everything, right? I mean, I'm primarily now a teacher and I sing, right? Like I associate with both of those things. And for me, it's like the same side of the coin, right? Or two different sides of the same coin. I think that's the phrase, whatever. But a lot of people are like me. They're singing and they've been singing for years, but maybe that's not the only thing that they do, right? And so I wanted to kind of talk about it from that perspective. Wanted to share a little bit more about like how I got into teaching. So sorry for those of you that asked questions, I will address that, but I want to share where I'm coming from first so you know, okay? Because some of you may not know this, but I started out in singing, classical singing, when I was 15. I think I started voice lessons at 13, and I really tried to sing rock and like hard musical theater, like, belting and stuff, and that was not working out. My mom was like, yeah, maybe you want to try classical singing. So I did. And when she played me Maria Callas, I remember, actually it was a tape. It was a tape in a car. And I was like, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. And I kind of jumped in with both feet and never looked back. I had a very good high school teacher. I had like no head voice, by the way. I had like 0 head voice when I was young, and that was part of the problem. Like nothing was working, but I had a really amazing teacher in high school, and she took my voice from like 0 to hero, and I was winning competitions, got into really great schools. I decided to go to Westminster Choir College, but I got a full ride to many places. She really turned my voice around, and I'm going to shout out to Priscilla Bagley because she is actually still teaching. I know she does more musical theater now, but she's amazing. Wonderful teacher. And so through her, she really got my voice started on the right track. And even then, she knew what I was. Your Lirico Spinto. I mean, I met with a couple from Italy that were opera singers, and they knew that then. Of course, I went to college, and they're like, no one's a Spinto. You're something soubrette or mezzo, or just, anyways, beginning of like voice dysmorphia. What am I? What's going on? But anyways, I'm going to skip the vocal stuff today because that's for another day, and I talk about that enough. So anyways, went to undergrad. I got cast in the operas, so I was performing leading roles already when I was young. Then I was auditioning for summer programs. I did a few in my undergrad, and then I went to grad school. And grad school, actually, I didn't end up going to my first choice, but funny enough, I'm really glad I didn't, because where I ended up going, I got so much big role experience, and it was a really great program for me. It was University of Texas at Austin. And after that, I went up to Binghamton, New York for 3 seasons. I was a resident artist at Tri-Cities Opera, where again, I had major role experience, but this time in a professional theater. gorgeous sets, gorgeous costumes, huge theater, full orchestra. And my first role there was Gilda. Then I did, I forget the order that I did them in, but it was like Gilda, Susanna, Adina, Fiordiligi, Antonia, some other roles. I forget. Lauretta, maybe? I don't know. So a lot of roles at Tri-Cities Opera. And then after that, I auditioned for all the Young Artist programs, right? All of them in the US. And pretty much got rejected from all of them, actually. Like, I'm trying to think. It's been a really long time ago. But I remember I got a call back for a couple. I got a call back for Marilla. I think I did get a call back for them, and then I think I bombed it. I'm not sure what happened, but did not get in. Okay. So that was like a very interesting time, because here I was performing and thinking I was doing really well, and then I would go out and do these Young Artist Program auditions and really not get anything. But I was also winning competitions. So this is another thing that was interesting that was happening in my life. I was doing really well in competitions. And, I would get feedback and, of course, this or that. And a lot of people didn't know my voice type. I'm not sure I knew my voice type. For a very long time, didn't know my voice type. Let's put it that way. And I think I was singing the wrong repertoire, or who knows what was happening. But anyways, auditions for Young Artist programs were not going well. Wasn't getting anything. But I was winning competitions. And so eventually, as I was finishing up my tenure at Tri-Cities Opera, I decided, you know what? Maybe the Young Artist Program thing just isn't for me. I don't know. And I want to say, I really can't remember. I'm sorry. This sounds really weird, but I really can't remember. I think I may have done some kind of summer Young Artist Program at some point, but it was small. It wasn't like a really big program. So I decided, you know what? Let me just go for like more professional jobs and see what happens. And so I started doing that. And I was living near New York at the time. So in New York, there were a lot of really great, what I call semi-professional companies, meaning they hire really good singers, but the pay is like suspect, right? But I mean, it is what it is. And they usually work with your work hours or whatever. But I skipped the most important part. So as I was finishing, when I was in grad school, let me start back there. When I was in grad school, as soon as I started grad school, my family lost their business, and all of a sudden I kind of was left on my own, right? Financially, meaning. So I had to figure it out. And I knew I did not want to be a starving artist. I just didn't. So what I did was I said, what do I want to do? I don't want to be doing something outside of music. I'm not interested in that. And there was a job opening at Anderson High School in Austin, Texas. And it was for a voice teacher for the high school students. I'd never really taught before. I taught maybe a couple lessons in undergraduate, right? I said, okay, let's apply for this. So I got the job, and I to be fair, I did teach kind of before, because I would have friends and, we would play around and I would teach them and things like that, right? So it was a complete first day, but definitely first day of like paying client for sure. Okay. So I taught at Anderson High, and I taught at another school, and I can't remember the name of it, but for my whole tenure in Austin. And then when I went up to Binghamton, I was teaching a little bit, like here and there, but I was quite busy. So I didn't have too much time for that. But as soon as I finished Binghamton, I moved to New York, and I said, I do not want to be a starving artist. So I very consistently built up my studio. And like I said, I'd been teaching ever since graduate school. And when I got to a permanent location, this was before the internet was really like a thing, teaching on the internet. I wasn't doing that. I was teaching live. So this would have been around, I'm trying to think of years. I don't know, 2011? Okay, I think so. Anyways, before Skype and like Zoom, definitely before Zoom, but before all of these things. Okay. And so by 2014, I had a really big voice studio. So I was teaching what I would call full time, definitely teaching full time. I mean, not 40 hours a week, but full time for voice teaching, right? And I was also singing in New York at some of these semi-professional companies. And then what I was also doing was auditioning for professional companies. I got my first agent, I think around 2010, 11. I don't remember. Okay, it was sometime then. And then they started sending me out on auditions. And I started getting jobs. Like, funny thing, right? I didn't get into any young artist program. But like I said, I was getting feedback that I was good. So it wasn't like it was a total, off type of thing. But it was a little concerning because I'm like, okay, this is not what's going on, So I did start getting professional work, and I'm using the year 2014 because that was the year that I had like 3 major terrible life events happen. And it like derailed my whole existence. And so I went just into survival mode and was basically just teaching. But the irony was that was the year, I think it was 2013. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off with my years. I think it might have been 2013. I had the most professional jobs that I have ever had, right? So that was like a really, really great year. And that was also the year that everything came crashing down in my personal life. So I was doing what I could to just kind of make it through. I do think this was 2014, by the way, now that I'm thinking about it. 2013 and 2014 were both very good years professionally for me. And personally, I can't remember when everything kind of fell apart, but it was like 2013, 2014. And then I just had to make it through. But as soon as I got through the first few jobs, there was like a break. There was maybe a break of 3 or 4 months before my next job. And I stopped practicing, like literally stopped practicing. Like not a sound was coming out of my mouth. Okay. I think I still went to my voice lessons. So maybe I was singing once every 2 weeks, once every week or something like that, but that's it. I was working, I was teaching, but I was in survival mode. Like I did not want to do anything. And I remember vocalizing for my job that was later that year in 2014, and I couldn't sing it. I couldn't sing Gilda. Okay, I was like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with my voice? So I worked it out. Like I did work it out. It was on the edge. And actually, funny enough, I had some friends, they were like, oh my gosh, you sound great. I'm like, I feel like I'm dying, but I made it through, right? I made it through. And then I had another job later that year, and I felt like I just could not keep it together with everything going on. It was okay, but it was actually kind of bad singing, to be honest. Out of tune, whatever. So I would say I took some time off, okay? I took time off from auditioning. I just sort of let things cool. So that year, 2014, I did not do almost any auditions. I think I did 1. And so the following year, I actually didn't have I think I still had a couple jobs, but it wasn't very many, right? And it was more just like on recommendation or on this or that, right? But I didn't do auditions. So then at some point, I can't remember if it was 2015 or 2016, I moved to California for 1 year with my ex, okay? And so at that time I was teaching live, all of the students there. And I said, hey guys, so this was the other thing. When I would go away on jobs, on singing jobs, I would keep my students because I would say, hey guys, we can do Skype. And this was like when Skype was starting to be a thing. I'm like, let's just try it so that we're not so long away from each other. So by the time I was moving to California, I said, whoever wants to stay with me can stay with me on Skype. And a lot of people did. Like at that time, kind of most of my studio stayed with me. So I moved out to California, kept teaching, and picked up some more students in California. I was just there maybe 10 months, okay? It was supposed to be a permanent move, but my ex and I ended up breaking up, and that was 2016. So yeah. So consider I moved from New York to California, and then I was in California for 10 months. And I remember that was, it was actually kind of a dramatic leaving. I literally left. Like I packed my stuff and I left. Okay. And why I'm telling you all of this is because you can understand how the career kind of gets navigated through life, right? So for the next, I would say 6 months, I was quote unquote homeless. I wasn't actually homeless. I visited my friends around the country. I visited my family. And I had just met my husband now, right? We had just met on a job. He was my conductor in La Boheme, and I had been singing a job, and we fell in love. So, but he lived in Europe and I was still in the US. So it was pretty serious pretty quickly. Like we both knew, and we weren't young anymore. Like he's definitely not young, and I was kind of like, north of young. So we knew like it was, let's make this serious or not. And because of that, I said, look, okay, I want to go to Europe. And he's like, yeah, like that's definitely the way. And I'm like, I want to be in Europe because that is where opera is really like alive and thriving. I mean, we have a great scene in the US, but the sheer number of opera companies in Europe is just so much greater than the US. Okay. But of course, all my connections are in the US, not in Europe. So I did know I would be starting over, but I've always had a very adventurous spirit. So like, that's not a thing. I'm kind of a risk taker in that way. And I was like, okay, we're just going to change my life again. So by 2018, so we kind of did a 1.5 year long distance, and I took a temporary apartment up in New Jersey, and we hung out there when he would come visit, right? And I knew I would be moving there, but it was just a matter of getting everything in order. My dad in 2016 got very sick. He had heart surgery and he never really quite recovered. So before I was moving to Europe, which was in 2018, he was quite sick. And when I moved here to Slovakia, which is where I am now, he was really going downhill, and I had to, from Slovakia, find some specialists, which I had the help of wonderful friends. I'll skip this part because this is not about singers, but I'm just saying that I was dealing with my dad's really deteriorating health while I was overseas. So through the year of 2018, that fall I had moved here, but 2018, 2019, I was very much distracted by my dad's health, and I was flying back and forth. I was barely here in Europe. I was going constantly back to the US. I did a few auditions, but not really anything because I didn't have an agent at the time here. I did have an agent from the US, but not here. So, yeah, so anyways, I did have a couple contracts in 2018 and 19 in the US, so I did have to fly back for those. And then skip forward, right? COVID happens, 2020. So at the end of 2019, I was hired for my first European job, and that was supposed to happen in 2020. We actually started rehearsing and got through all the musical rehearsals and everything. We started staging, and then COVID happened. So, then we skip, right? COVID. Now, during this time, as I moved here to Europe, I still was teaching all my US people. So New Jersey, California, and then I moved to Europe. And then I realized, you know what? I'm not going to be, I wanted to keep my whole like teaching global, right? Like, so this is the thing. I knew I didn't want to be just like local in Slovakia. I that wasn't going to be a thing because I'm learning the language. I can say basic things, but that's just not going to be a thing, right? So I knew that I had to kind of diversify my teaching business in a different way. And so COVID was kind of a blessing in disguise for that. Now, I had already been online, so when everything crashed, it was business as normal for me at that point. So that didn't really change. I mean, obviously I wasn't singing anymore, so that sucked. But the teaching was there and hadn't really changed because I was online. So that's when I really used COVID to firmly establish myself as being able to be here in Europe and diversify all of my clients now from all over the world. So then let's see. So COVID happens 2021, 22. So now I still have, at this time, once things start to open up, I've made some friends here in Europe and I've had some good connections. And I did actually have an agent, but it was kind of a strange situation and not too much came of it, even though it looked very promising. So still nothing was really happening for me. I was having to make connections here and there, and I was, making some good connections, having some good auditions and stuff, but nothing was really it wasn't like having somebody to book you for auditions. It was sort of like here and there, which was fine because I still had contracts. So I wasn't stressed out, and I did get I did make some connections from some colleagues of mine who helped me get my first premiere in Europe, so that was cool. And then up till this point, so now I signed with a new agent this summer, and she is just awesome. I have to give a little shout out to Vibko Kuster because she is already really, really, really an awesome agent. And I can say that out loud, and I'm just going to be proud. She's a good person. She does what she says she's going to do, and she works really, really hard for her singers and her clients. Because actually she also manages female conductors too, and male conductors, but she started out as, that was kind of what she was known for. Anyways, so I'm telling you all of this so you can kind of know all the things that go into when you see somebody and what they're doing or what they're not doing, right? It's a little bit of a different story when you hear it from the back end and you hear all of the life events that are going on, right? And you hear, okay, wow, this is going. And so I could have easily at any point just been like, you know what, this is just too much. And I'm just going to focus on my teaching, right? Which is going really well. And I love my clients. They're amazing. So I could have just done that, right? But honestly, I love singing. I love it. I love it. I love it. And for me, it was always I don't want to feel physically under stress. I would see, I don't know how to say this other than just say it really bluntly. I didn't want to be poor, okay? I didn't want to be the starving artist. And I knew that from day one, okay? When my parents lost their business and I had to like figure things out for myself very unexpectedly. It was very unexpected. That changed my whole perspective on life, right? And so I always knew I wanted to sing, but I also knew that I had to have a level of physical comfort in order to do my best work. So I did spend a lot of time carving out that security for my life where I don't have to leave the world of singing. So my brain can be on singing like all day. And I'm either singing or I'm teaching, and it's the same thing. So the path of a singer, right, is, I think you have to look at yourself and you have to know yourself. You have to know, like, back in my day, when I was going to school, they talked a lot about like, okay, your plan A or your plan B. And they're like, if you have a plan B, that you're just going to fall back on that because, you know, unless you really, really want it. But honestly, I just don't think that's true. And I did buy into that for a while back then. Like you have to only focus on this, you know, and I really did keep my singing and teaching life very separate at that time. I mean, they're still a little bit separate on the website just for functionality's sake, but I don't think it's so separate now. But back then I was like, oh, okay, I don't really want anyone knowing that I'm doing this because I want them to take me seriously as a singer. But like, let's be honest, what does that even mean? Because what? So you have 4 or 5 jobs a year. Now, maybe if you're singing at really, really big theaters, maybe that's enough to pay the bills. But 4 or 5 regional contracts a year, like that's not paying the bills, right? So, you know, and back in New Jersey, I did have a church job. I did have all of those things, right? But still, it's like, who are we kidding? We're only kidding ourselves, okay? But I do think that there is that rhetoric. I hope it's lessening now because a lot of people are talking about it. And I think that's why I want to add my voice to that too, because I think it's important that we remove that feeling of like, oh, we have to do something else, you know, and then it begs the question, well, why are we doing this? Why are we even trying if there's not a possibility of a truly viable singing career? Well, first of all, that's not true. There is a possible viable singing career. I knew for myself, I was never going to be a chorister. I don't have the temperament for it. I don't want to do it. Okay. Don't know how else to say it. Don't want to do it. So I knew that that was not an option for me as something like full time. But you have to know yourself. But a chorister's life, especially if you're at a good theater, it's a really freaking awesome gig. Like, I actually wish I would want to be in the chorus. I really wish. It would kill my soul. It's just not my personality. I can't do it. I can't explain it. It's weird. I don't know. I'm like a loner. I like to be by myself. I don't like to be a part of a group. I don't like groups in general. They make me uncomfortable. So it was not going to be my thing. But I know some people. I know like a girl, she's in the Wiener Staatsoper. I know some people at the Met and they love it. It's wonderful. So that is an entirely viable option for a career path, right? And I think, again, we give that like, oh, we in our brains go, well, you know, that's chorus. Do you know how hard it is to get into those positions? Like, you have to be really good. So it is not any kind of, second fallback plan, right? Now, again, you have to know yourself. So if it's going to make you miserable, you don't want to do something that's going to make you miserable, right? But I personally, for me, I love teaching, and to do 3 or 4 gigs a year and teach, that makes me happy. That makes me really happy. And yeah, I do need to teach, right? Like, I'm not going to exist on 3 or 4 jobs a year. That's not going to happen, right? So I do think that there is some kind of planning that has to go into, and this ties into one of the questions, planning a solo singing career, right? I think it is very prudent to think about the financial piece. Most people exist better when they are not stressed about paying their bills, okay? And they're not stressed about feeding themselves, or they're not stressed about if they have to go on an audition. How are you going to get there? How are you going to pay for the flight or the hotel or whatever, the train? You're going to need money, just plain and simple. Okay, so like there is absolutely no shame in making yourself comfortable so that you can do the things that you need to do as a singer. And let's go back to, why are we singing, right? Why are we singing if it seems like opera is sort of I hate to say this word, but it seems, I'm not going to say it is, it can seem on the outside that it's sort of an underappreciated and dying art form. And we're like trying to bring it back, right? But companies are closing left and right. They're cutting their seasons. This is happening. That is happening. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to turn around, but the cultural climate is not so supportive of the classical arts. And we have to face that reality, right? Some people, again, I'm going to talk about another option. Some people love musical theater. They love crossover. Not me. Okay, so I knew that that was not my path. I tried it, by the way. I did try it. It was, not going to work out. But if that is something that is interesting for you, that's another really, really, really great path as a singer, right? It's not an easy path. It's not really any easier than this. But if you love it, there are more opportunities in a way, right? I mean, there's a lot of professional theater companies. I'm not going to speak to that. You know what? Let's cut this portion of it because I really don't know what's going on in that world. But I do know what's going on in the opera world. So I'm going to stay on task. So in the opera world, right, theaters are closing. Seasons are kind of cutting their productions. Some companies are pooling forces and they're using the same cast for the different productions at like 3 different theaters, right? So this is happening. It's creating less jobs, and that is true. Okay. So you have to know going into it, this is a shrinking in this moment. I'm not giving it a death sentence yet, but it is a shrinking industry in 2024. Okay. And since COVID, this was also one of the questions. Since COVID, it's gotten worse. I remember when I was starting out, oh my God, was it 2008 already? 2008 was the crash, the big economic crash in the US. That was around the time my parents lost their business, right? And I remember so many opera companies closed and we all thought, oh my gosh, this is the end of days. This is right. But we established a new normal, and that also happened. That also happened with COVID, right? Like everything crashed. People reassessed their lives. A lot of singers decided that they didn't want to be in the industry anymore. And so they left, right? But a lot of singers came in. we never get, there are always new singers coming in, right? So it doesn't really lessen the pool. But so then what happens is we have a lot of singers coming into the market and less jobs. So now this is going to tie into the third question, and I'll address some of more of the things, right? But this is about rejection, right? You've got to be really pragmatic about rejection. And I think it's really important to, of course, to look at yourself. What could I have done better? What this. But listen, guys, I go to like at least an opera a week at different theaters. And I see what's happening on the stages, and there's some really great things, but there's not perfection happening out there. So don't kid yourself, okay? There's really wonderful singing going on all the stages of the world, but there's also some not so great singing going on. There's some really inspired acting. There's also some not so great acting. There's this, there's that. You're going to find everything on the stages of the world. Okay, everything. So don't sit there and tell yourself, "Oh my gosh, I'm not getting hired. I'm terrible." Right? At the end of the day, it's a business. So when the economy is shrinking and budgets are being cut and seasons are being cut and, companies are doing less and less and less, they don't want to take risks. And what is a risk? A risk is like someone that's new to them, someone that doesn't have a huge history, someone that cannot pull the marketing, right? So these are all reasons why, even if you sing like perfect, you may not get hired. Okay. Practical dollars and cents. And let me just tell you, like, sitting on the other side, like now that I'm kind of in this other world as a teacher, I see a lot of what goes on the back end of a lot of things. And it is really, really interesting. And even like listening to my husband, for those of you that weren't here earlier, my husband is a conductor, he was with the Slovak National Theater for many years, does a lot of freelance. We met in America. So he even talks about like what goes on the back end, right? And this does not excuse any of us from looking at ourselves and always asking every single day, what can we do better? How can we improve as artists? Blah, 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 blah. Of course, we all want to do that because we're artists and we want to get better. But it's just to say that whatever you are, experiencing in terms of rejection, you have to know you're in an oversaturated market, and rejection is usually not personal, meaning it usually doesn't mean that you're terrible. It usually doesn't mean that you wouldn't be good in this part or in this theater or whatever, or in the school. It usually doesn't mean that. Well, school's a different thing. I'll talk about that in a second. But in the professional world, right, there are a lot of factors that go into the hiring process. And so you don't always know why you didn't get chosen. And usually there's not a reason of why you didn't get chosen. There's just a list of reasons of why someone else did. So I think that when you're looking around and saying, I see all these people doing great things, you have to know that most times, unless they're really at the top levels, right? Like where they're not auditioning anymore, they're just getting calls left and right and their agent is feeling right. Most people, every opportunity that you see that they are doing, they fought for in some way. Okay, they advocated for themselves. They called people, they, made some kind of in some way. Maybe not personally with the company, but they had to work for that beyond just singing really wonderfully. And now this will go to my discussion a little bit about agencies too. And this is something that is the unfortunate reality, but agencies now are in a very weird state, to be honest, okay? They are in an extremely weird state. And when you think about how agencies used to work compared to how they work now, and I'm seeing all these big mergers of the big companies, and I'm thinking, okay, there's huge conflicts of interest that are going on. And if you don't see it, then you're going to assume that it's something that you did as to why you can't go any further. But think about it. this conductor, this director, this singer, they're all maybe on the same roster, maybe not exactly the same, but the three agencies have now joined forces, right? And so they kind of close in ranks and they take a theater. And what that means is that the theater is now being run by agencies. And of course, whoever is, and oftentimes, especially in America, actually in Europe too, but especially in America, we have a lot of active directors and conductors that are running companies, and they are often managed, okay? And there is a vested interest. I'm not saying anything shady is going on per se, but let's just, spell out the dollars here. There is a vested financial interest for someone who is at the head of a company to hire the other people that are on their roster because it helps the agency. So it's really important to be aware of that situation. And I'm not saying that this is always like this, like that I'm not trying to be like this, but you have to see that these things do happen and that it is, at the end of the day, everyone is trying to make a living. And some are doing it honestly and some are doing it not honestly. I mean, let's just get real, right? So in this kind of market where you have these really big agencies and now you have an influx of singers, and let's just assume right now that all the singers are wonderful, because kind of they are in a sense, right? There's a lot of really great singers out there. So the agencies have their pick, right? Of singers. And there's a reason why an agent would want to work with a singer, right? Of course, usually it's that the singer has a kind of a resume of work that's already there, that so the agency can capitalize on that and say, look, the artist is doing this, this, and this. And then the theater is either at the same level or a little bit higher. We'll say, oh yeah, okay, well, we'll give them a shot. It makes the agent's job very easy when they have a body of work it's just advertising, right? It's like, it just makes it easier. And you can see that, right? Like that's not, I don't think that that's anything that's surprising. So if you go and you audition for an agency and you think, oh, all I have to do is sing really, really well. Well, now sometimes that works because they're looking for the voice type. Okay, that can work sometimes. But a lot of times it's like, well, you're good. But I mean, what can I do? You have not really much that I can offer. So they don't want to take you. They don't want to sign you, right? And then you're stuck at the other end. Well, how do I get in? How do I get work if I can't get someone to get me work? Like it becomes that kind of loop, right? So you have to get creative. You have to really get creative, and relationships are probably the most important thing that you can have. Like really, really, really important to have good relationships. And usually your best relationships are the ones that start earliest in your singing journey. I will tell you this is my experience. There's something about when you grow up with someone, and I mean, I don't mean like teenager, but in college and grad school, like I have some of my best connections from then, because you kind of know where the person is coming from. Like there's an unspoken connection there that it feels more natural, right? And then of course, as you go through life, you make more connections and more friends in the business. And then sometimes those friends end up in positions of power, right? And then that can be also a double-edged sword, because you don't want to sully the friendship and be like, okay, now you're here, like hire me. But at the same time, there is the possibility that something like that can happen. Of course, then all of those person's friends want to get hired, right? So these are all the things that come into play in a singing career. And it is really like, I guess you have to know what conditions you want to perform under. You know, some people are like, I will perform anywhere, no matter what. That really speaks to them. You know, for me, I love performing in like real opera. Like that's just, I love it. I love it so much. But to do something that's like a little bit, I'm not saying I don't like modern productions, that's not it. But I do, but if they're kind of done in the way that I feel like really, really speaks to the piece. You know, so there are opportunities for concerts, depending on where you live. If you live in a big city, there's more opportunity for things like that. Orchestral work, that's also something I really like. I love like good orchestras, and kind of more traditional repertoire, but can be modern if it's really great. So yeah, so you've got to know what you're looking for, what you really want, and then you can sort of, you know, niche your way in there. You get your focus, because I think the worst thing that you can do as a singer is sort of spot yourself all over the place. And believe me, I've done it, so I actually know. Okay, and that was part of a little bit my problem in terms of finding my repertoire, because I really did everything. Like I did modern music, I did I did classical, I did Mozart, Verdi, Rossini, modern, new compositions, a lot of Britain. And I was kind of all over the place, right? And I'm not saying you have to pare down. That's because I don't think that that's true either. But I never asked myself, what do I want? I was like, oh, whoever hires me for whatever it is, okay, then I will go for that, right? So I think that doesn't always play in your favor, because I think finding some sort of niche in terms of what speaks to you as an artist is important for your own sanity, if that makes sense. And for your own direction, like, what am I looking for? What kinds of music really keeps me inspired? I kind of have a list of things that don't inspire me, and I'm pretty open on the things that, you know, keep me inspired, so that you know what you should say yes to and what you maybe don't want to do. And I think there's a lot of power in being able to say no to things if you don't want to do them, right? I've had to say no to a couple of things lately that I was like, that's just not for me. Just not for me. And it's okay. Like, we can let that go and say, okay, goodbye. But it's also important to find the people that can help you in this career, that understand what you want as an artist, right? You need to find and have that vision align, because the worst thing you can do is be fighting your agent on repertoire, or be, being pushed to do things before you're ready, things like that, right? That's not good for anybody. So I think that right now, to start your career as a solo singer, it looks different depending on where you are. I think you really need to be happy where you're living. And that's the other thing. I spent a lot of my life, like I did live in the New Jersey area. And why did I do that? Because I wanted to be near New York, because that was where you should be as a singer in the US. And I have to tell you, I really, really, really did not like that area. I really didn't. But I felt like I had to be there. And so now I love the people. So if any of my people from New Jersey are watching and going, what? She hates New Jersey. I love the people. The people are some of my favorite people. But just specifically, New York, New Jersey area was not doing it for me. My favorite time, like the place that I loved so much, was California. I loved it. And funny enough, I was like making really great connections there. And then of course I had to move away. But because I loved the place, it was really easy to sort of dive in, right? And like get involved in the scene, right? Like I remember having to drive into New York, and I did it a lot. Like I actually did it, but I always hated it. I hated New York. Like, oh, okay, maybe it was cool when I was 18 and I went there like the first couple times, but when I was having to go in a lot in my 20s, I was like, I don't like this. And then with LA, I was like, I love this city so much. And honestly, I really love where I live now. I love Slovakia. I love it. I think it's a great country, great people. So I think it is really important to find where you like and you feel good about living, right? You can kind of base yourself a lot of places as a singer. And I'm speaking to a very international audience, so I'm not even going to go to all of the places that you can be because it's endless, right? And I think now, since COVID specifically, we are not so tied down to one particular place, right? There's a lot of singers that can live in a place that they like, and then you can travel because a lot of companies are, they're using the videos to listen as preliminaries. So you're not having to fly around like crazy all the time. I mean, there still are auditions that you have to go to, but it's not so crazy like it used to be. So I do think that it's important to love where you live, love what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and also like make that plan, right? And if you're not happy where you are is as an artist or vocally, and this is the other thing too, like if you're not performing, you need to get practice as a performer. So I will go back on one of the things I just said. I'm like, don't take anything you don't want to take. But if like your calendar's empty and you don't have experience performing, you better take something just so you can keep those chops developing, because it's not going to help your cause if you just like sit and wait and don't do anything. You'll develop so much better as an artist. So there's no shame in taking like even an unpaid opportunity. Like I will just say, don't feel shameful about that. You're a singer, you want to sing. No one thinks you're getting into this to be rich. No one. Okay. So take that opportunity if it's going to get you on stage and get you experience and keep the ball rolling in terms of your artistic development. That is so important. If you don't have experience doing that, you need to get it somewhere. And the best places are, if you're younger, I'm speaking kind of to a younger crowd now, there's a ton of summer programs, right? Like a ton. So if you're not getting experience at your university, and you should, by the way, especially if you're paying an arm and a leg, like it's like it costs in the US, right? You should be getting experience performing there. But if you're not, there's a ton of summer programs that are specifically geared for college students. And, if you're older and you're getting into this too, this is the other thing too, I would say, I think it's ridiculous how the opera world has become so ageist, like really, really ageist. And as things are getting better in terms of inclusivity, I don't see things getting a whole lot better in regards to age. And that is something I would like to see changed. I'll do another live on that topic because that's a whole nother thing. But I will just say that I believe very strongly that if you feel a calling to this, and, I know someone, and she had a whole family. She always kept up her singing, but didn't pursue it professionally because she raised her family, and now she's going and she is pursuing it professionally, and she's a wonderful singer. And you know what? I hope she gets all the opportunities because she deserves them. And I do think that it is not too late to start. And I'm hoping that the industry starts to change on that front, because inclusivity is inclusivity. And that includes people who are getting older, right? So I do think that's going to change. I have a little feeling that is going to change. So that's going to be a great thing when that happens. But I really do believe, like, if you've had teachers or coaches or anybody in the industry tell you, oh, you're too old. Do you know, I had an agent, not one that I worked with, by the way, but an agent tell me that I was too old when I was 33. Yeah. Okay. Too old at 33. Really? All right. It's ridiculous. If you've ever had anyone, and I was not, by the way, I was not starting my career. I had already been singing for over 10 years professionally. So where is that, like, too old? Okay. But you're going to be told these things. I'm sure everybody who is seeing this has been told something like that at one point or another. Something along those lines. And you just have to ignore it because everyone is going to have an opinion. And like, are you going to listen to them? Or are you going to listen to you? Like, no. So I don't believe that it's too late to start. Now, there are some things, if you are really, really starting from the beginning at like learning how to sing at 40 years old, that's just the sheer amount of years that it does take to build a voice is probably going to set you, closer to 50 by the time it's done. And now I hope that you can start, but I'm just saying that you do have to allow for that knowledge. But let's say you trained early on and then you took some time off and now you want to come back to it, but you're older. Like, you shouldn't let that stop you. I really don't think that is something, and you may get pushback, but if you believe in yourself, you keep going. You keep going, because really, truly, like, I think that is important, and I will speak to this in another live, but I think that's going to change really, really soon. So anyways, this has gone on way too long. I realize it's like 10:10. My husband's going to be getting back from the theater and I'm going to have to talk to him. But anyways, so I hope that helps kind of understand my particular journey and some thoughts along the way, because I think it's so easy to just look at a piece of paper, look at a resume and go, okay, I know what's going on here. No, you don't. No one knows what's going on. You know what's going on, right? And so again, I'll just leave you with this thought that I just kept having. Like, of course we look at ourselves. Of course we make ourselves better artists, better singers, blah, 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 blah. But if you're feeling like, if you're the type of person that you go in and you do something, you sing, you don't get it, and you think, I am terrible, most likely you are not. And you have to just like take the rejections in a stride. You have to learn to do that. I think that's a very important skill. Of course you have to feel it. It's painful for sure. Like, rejection is not fun, but let me tell you, this is actually something I wanted to say about rejection. If you think that when you get that job, that the rejection stops, or when you get all the jobs, that the rejection stops, that's a fallacy. When you're going to have the feeling that you feel when you feel rejected is going to happen all the time in any circumstance. It can happen if, the director looks at you funny or says something like not so positive. It can happen when, you finish like this really heart-wrenching scene and someone's like, all right, thanks. Like, all of these things can make you feel rejected. So if you think for a second that once I get the job, once I start getting work, I won't care. Oh no, you'll care. So I think it's really important to find a way to deal with these feelings of rejection, or these feelings of like, I'm not good enough, or, again, I will say it. Of course, we always make ourselves better, but you can't harp on that for so long, right? And also not accept that, okay, I just have to like let this roll off my shoulders, on to the next thing. I allow myself, like, if I do something really terrible, either I have a bad audition or I find out that I didn't get something that I wanted, I let it sting for like a day. Like I have a day, and not even a whole day anymore. Usually if it's at night, it's like that evening. And then I just like, I know because I've been through it enough that it's just going to roll through. So I think the better you, like, the more rejected you get, the more rejections you get, actually you get better at getting rejected, and then it doesn't affect you as much. And then you're able to go and like perform under pressure better. So if you're younger and you're watching this and you're starting out your journey, go ahead and put yourself out to get rejected. I think that's a really great plan, because you will build up a sort of grit that that's a grit that you need for this career. So I remember when I was young in college, like my first year, they gave us a whole speech and they're like, you better not audition for anything before you're ready, or you're going to get blacklisted. No one's ever going to hear you again. And this was the terrible fear. I mean, I really had this fear. And I'm sure that there are some people that if you go sing poorly for them, then they never hear you again. I'm sure that there are, by the way. But I mean, that's just life. But in general, that fear that creates will constantly have you questioning yourself, right? So like, of course you want to be mindful, you don't want to go audition for the Met after you just graduated, like, your first year of undergraduate. Probably not the best time. Maybe for some people it is, but most people not. Okay. So we get that, right? But like, why not? Like, there's too much censorship that happens. And I will say the exception is this, like a working professional that's had to take a step back and rework their technique. That's not a bad idea to just step back from auditions. That's a different story though that I'm saying right now, which is like when you're starting out and you're building your tool set, go and audition and hope that you get rejected. Especially like the dumber the audition, really hope that you get rejected so you can practice that skill. And so that affects you less and less. And then the things that you really want, you can go in. I'll tell you, the funniest thing is like, I used to get the most nervous for like the smaller the audition, the more nervous I got. I don't know what it was, but I think it was like, oh my gosh, if I get rejected from this, then it's terrible, right? And so like the really big auditions, I wouldn't get it nervous for, because I'd be like, well, if I don't get this, there's a reason, right? Like it's okay. But the really small auditions, I would get super nervous for. I remember that. So yeah, go use those auditions as a time to practice, and you'll probably get something, right? Like, worst thing that could happen is you don't get something and you were practicing that anyways. So I think that is something to put into your plan, right? And of course, like I said, for those things that you really like have your mind set on, be sure that you're ready. But just because you don't get accepted into whatever that is doesn't mean you weren't ready. So keep that in mind. I've heard so many stories of people auditioning for the Met, like, 5, 6, 7 times, and then they get in, right? So just keep in mind, keep on the path, and really, really try to make your whole life easy and fun. I think that is so important. That's something that I did not do, especially in my 20s. My 20s were not fun, okay? Really. I mean, I did have some fun, but they were not fun in terms of this career. I was very much living my life only for one thing, putting everything, like all of my energy into that next audition or that next job and like everything. And there is something to be said for that. But at the same time, it really took away a lot of my joy and a lot of my love of being alive. We're all different. So there are some people that find a lot of joy in just having that like focused tunnel vision. But if you find that that's not you anymore, that's also okay. So I will close out tonight because this has been going on way too long and I got like 5 texts from my husband. So I will talk to you all later, and I will be back live and talking more about things like this, because I think this is more of a live thing, because I wouldn't want to like record this and then watch it again and be like, okay, no. turn it off, delete. But I will put this up there for those that couldn't see this live. Anyways, good evening, good afternoon. I don't know what time it is at all your time zones, but have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.